not the kind of woman who likes to stir up trouble. At 57, I've seen enough of life to know that quiet dignity often keeps you sane. I raised 2 kids on my own, cleaned houses during the day, waited tables at night, and never once begged for anything. So when I landed the job cleaning for Kingston Mutual Insurance, I thought I'd finally caught a break. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid better than most cleaning gigs. 2 nights a week, I scrubbed floors, wiped down executive desks, emptied the trash bins stuffed with shredded contracts and half-eaten takeout. I knew when the VP was cheating on his diet and when the receptionist got a raise. The building had its secrets, and I learned how to see without looking. But I didn't mind. I worked hard, never missed a shift, and smiled politely whenever the staff stayed late. Most ignored me. A few smiled. And then there was Mr. Calvin Brewer, my boss. The man who signed my paychecks. Or was supposed to. First, everything was fine. I submitted my hours to Calvin's secretary at the end of each week. Every 2 Fridays, a crisp envelope would show up in my locker. But then came March. A bitter month, not just because of the weather. My envelope wasn't there. I gave it a few days, thinking maybe someone misplaced it. On Monday night, I stayed late and went to Calvin's office myself, something I never did. I knocked gently on the glass door. He looked up from his desk, clearly annoyed. Yes. Sorry, Mr. Brewer. I didn't get my paycheck last week. He blinked. Right, payroll's been a mess lately. I'll sort it out. That was it. No apology. No explanation. I waited another week. Nothing. Then another. I left 3 voicemails. No response. I asked the secretary. She said he'd get back to me. He never did. I kept showing up to clean, hoping it would be resolved. But when the second paycheck didn't come, I knew something was off. That was nearly $1,300 I was owed, money I needed for rent and medication. I was eating oatmeal twice a day just to make the groceries last. One night, while scrubbing the conference room floor, I overheard a conversation through the cracked door of the executive lounge. We can't keep cooking the books like this, Cal. The IRS isn't blind. My mop stopped mid-swipe. You let me worry about that, Calvin said, voice sharp. If we keep our heads down, no one's going to notice. I backed out of the hallway slowly, heart pounding. What did he mean by cooking the books? Suddenly, my missing paycheck seemed like more than an oversight. The moment I heard those words, cooking the books, something in me changed. I'd spent my life doing thankless work, always keeping quiet, always swallowing my pride. But this time? No. This time it was different. This wasn't just about a missed paycheck. It was about being treated like I didn't matter. Like I was invisible. I went home that night with my knuckles red from scrubbing and my jaw clenched so tight I could barely sleep. The next morning, I made a decision. I was going to get my money, and I wasn't going to play nice. The first thing I did was document everything. I printed copies of my hours from the time clock software they used. I had photos of the logbook showing my initials on every night I worked. I even took a picture of the locker where my last envelope should have been. I knew it might not seem like much, but I wasn't stupid. I'd watched enough news to know that paper trails matter. Then I made a call. I dialed the Department of Labor. The woman on the phone sounded bored at first, until I mentioned my hours, the unpaid wages, and my suspicion that the company might be committing fraud. Suddenly, she was wide awake. Can you repeat that last part? She asked. I overheard the owner talking about cooking the books, I said quietly. And I haven't been paid in over a month. Do you have proof? Not of that conversation, I admitted, but I do have proof that I worked, and that I wasn't paid. She asked me to email everything I had. Next, I called the IRS. That one made my palms sweat. I mean, who calls the IRS willingly? But I did. I told them everything, that I suspected tax fraud, that payroll was suspiciously inconsistent, that the company was making large off-the-books payments to someone called CS Consulting, a name I kept seeing on discarded paperwork when I emptied the shred bins. They told me they'd open an inquiry. I didn't expect anything right away. Government wheels turn slowly. But I wasn't done. Because then I remembered something else. The police. Not 9/11, of course. But I knew a community officer who used to give talks at my church. Officer Henley. He once said, if something smells fishy at work, talk to someone. Even white-collar crimes destroy lives. So I emailed him too. Felt like sending messages into the void, until 2 weeks later everything changed. It was a rainy Thursday evening when I arrived for my usual shift. I was already tired. I'd been working double shifts at a diner just to stay afloat, and I almost didn't notice the 3 black SUVs parked near the back entrance of the insurance building. I opened the side door with my key card, only to be stopped by a man in a suit and badge. Ma'am, building's closed for investigation. You can't go in right now. I blinked. Investigation? IRS and local police, he said. Do you work here? I clean the offices, I said. He asked for my name and then stepped aside to speak into his radio. A minute later, he came back. Miss Harper, right? You're actually listed as a confidential informant. You can come in, but we'll need you to stay in the lobby. I stepped inside and what I saw took my breath away. Agents were everywhere. Rummaging through filing cabinets, carrying out boxes of records, even removing hard drives from computers. And at the center of it all, with his face the color of sour milk, was Calvin Brewer. My boss. He was shouting at someone. This is outrageous. You can't just walk in here like this. But they could. And they did. An officer walked past me and gave me a little nod. You were right to come forward, he said. And just like that, the man who thought he could get away with underpaying the help was losing everything. I came back the next morning, even though I wasn't scheduled. I don't know why exactly. Maybe I just needed to see that it was real. That I wasn't dreaming. That for once, someone like me had spoken up and the world had actually listened. Yellow tape stretched across the front entrance like a scar. Kingston Mutual Insurance sign had already been taken down. Not officially, I guess, but someone had knocked the K off. It now just read, Kingston Mutual. I stood in the rain for a long minute, taking it in. Company was shut down pending a full investigation. Every employee was put on administrative leave. Bank accounts frozen. Equipment seized. And Calvin? Arrested. He was charged with wage theft, tax evasion, and falsifying payroll documents. Turns out I wasn't the only one he hadn't paid. 2 part-time clerks and an intern had also been missing wages, but they were too scared to say anything. When they heard what I'd done, they came forward too. The Department of Labor contacted me a few days later and said my report helped trigger a broader inquiry. They had everything they needed now, and they thanked me for coming forward. Imagine that. Thanked me. I wasn't done yet. I filed a formal wage complaint and attached every piece of evidence I'd gathered. 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Inside was a check. It wasn't just the $1,300 I was owed. It was triple that, including damages for late payment and emotional distress. I stared at the number for a long time, tears in my eyes. It wasn't just about the money. It was about finally being seen. The weeks that followed felt surreal. I gave a statement to the IRS, helped cross-reference some of the cleaning logs with shredded documents, and even testified during a pretrial hearing. Calvin tried to deny everything. Claimed I had a personal vendetta against him. But the records didn't lie. Turns out he'd been funneling money into shell companies and underreporting employee wages for over 5 years. He even had a second unofficial set of books hidden in his locked desk, the one I had dusted every Tuesday without knowing what was inside. His lawyers tried to cut a deal. The court wasn't kind. Calvin Brewer was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison. Company was dissolved. And me? I was given a formal letter of apology by the labor board. I got every cent I was owed. And the best part? My story was used in a training video for workplace rights across the state. They even asked if I'd be willing to appear on camera. I declined. But knowing that my voice helped others, that was enough. I took the money and finally did something for myself. I got my knees fixed. I'd been putting off the surgery for years. Then I booked a little cabin for a weekend by the lake. Just me, some peace and quiet, and the deep, warm satisfaction of knowing justice had been served. Looking back, I often wonder, what would have happened if I'd stayed silent? If I had convinced myself, like so many times before, that it wasn't worth the fight? That I was just a cleaner and didn't have the right to speak up? I'll tell you what would have happened. He would have kept stealing, kept mistreating people who couldn't afford to fight back. And I would have stayed invisible. But this time, I refused. So here's the lesson for anyone out there feeling small, ignored, or cheated. Never tolerate mistreatment just because you've gotten used to it. Silence might keep the peace, but only for your oppressor. You have a voice. Use it. Even if you're just a cleaner. Even if you're just one woman. Even if you're 57. 'Cause sometimes one voice is all it takes to bring down the whole damn building.